Alright, guys, so UFC 304 is officially in the books. The UFC ended up going back to Manchester. I think the last time they went to Manchester was for UFC 204. That's when Bisping ended up fighting, Hendo, Dan Henderson. And we already knew what happened over there. Manchester ended up opening up a brand new arena. It's called Co-op Live. It actually looked really nice from the outside, from what was being displayed on obviously the prelims and the pay-per-view, and it looked pretty good. Just gotta suck, honestly, for the UK fans, because being somebody that lives on the East Coast, we got everything at traditional time, 10 o'clock pay-per-view. Prelim started at 6 o'clock, so over in Manchester, it's a 6-hour difference from the East Coast in the United States. So that means that prelims must have started around just a little bit after 11:45, maybe like midnight, up until last fight, which is the main event. Probably ended around maybe about like 6 a.m. ish, right? So that was that. I know there was a couple of fighters that were complaining about, not really complaining, but they were saying that how they felt tired, and a little bit drained out, especially as you ended up going further and further into the card. And the main event, could have been many different factors, but what I do know is that Belal Muhammad is the new UFC welterweight champion. Now, came in as a big underdog. Not big like Sean Strickland did, but big enough where I think there were some books like DraftKings, FanDuel, I think some of them ended up having him as like a plus 220, and Leon as like a minus like 248, minus 250 in some books, right? So I actually had a parlay that featured Tom Aspinall, Paddy Pimblett, Arnold Allen, Mick Parkin, Nathaniel Wood, and last leg was Leon Edwards. And I wasn't sure if that was gonna hit, and like normal bettors do, they put like a hedge, damn if you do, damn if you don't. I ended up hedging last minute, and I ended up placing a bet on Belal Muhammad by decision, because Belal Muhammad, last time his finish was against Sean Brady, and even though it was standing TKO, he never knocked down Sean Brady. And actually, in his UFC career, I believe he's got like 12 or so fights, or maybe a little bit more. He's never scored a knockdown at all. So the finish upside didn't make any sense. And usually Belal Muhammad fights, they always go towards the finish. And even in his dreams too, going into media day and stuff like that, Belal was talking about how he was on a 50-42 Leon Edwards, and even in his dreams he never anticipated for him to get a finish, which is pretty bizarre, because your dreams are something that you can physically control, or for the most part. And even then, he saw himself getting a decision. So I think I got him for like plus 340 on DraftKings, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Belal Muhammad is now your new welterweight champion. Now, didn't look like Dana White was happy about it at all. A lot of fans weren't happy about it. To be honest, I wasn't a bit pleased whatsoever, because I do like Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, is he the most fun, exciting fighter? No, but I just felt that I don't know. There's something about Belal Muhammad that doesn't rub a lot of people the right way. And yeah, I got Belal Muhammad plus 350. Threw a couple bucks on it, nothing too crazy. Came out almost $40 richer. Alright, but yeah, so Belal Muhammad was the new welterweight champion. He won round 1, and immediately, within the first 2 minutes, I already knew how this fight was going to play out. Belal pressured, threw in a couple of jabs, but he was throwing jabs in the aspect of trying to pressure Leon, and with very little like resistance, he was able to take down Leon, and then slam him. And Leon thought that he was able just to be able to overlook him because he had fights against Usman, he had fights against Colby, who are also predominantly wrestlers, but also, they're also not in their, I would say, prime of their career, because Belal isn't really so much in his prime. I just think that Belal is a lot more conditioned, as opposed to Leon and Usman. So I think and like I said, I felt like this main event had a lot of different factors to come with it. Felt like this worked perfectly for Belal. He's acclimated towards Chicago Standard Time, which they're an hour behind the Eastern Standard Time, and that's a 7-hour difference compared to Manchester time. So Leon did say after the fight that he was feeling tired after round 1, and no excuses whatsoever. It's just that, hey, you know what? The UFC wanted to put it down for this time slot. Last time they were in the UK, for pay-per-view, they had it at like 3 in the afternoon, which was prime time for UK. So very unusual why they then ended up doing it prime time for the US, but it worked better for us. Belal Muhammad is now the new welterweight champion. What's next for him? To be honest, I wouldn't be so surprised if Dana and the matchmakers forces Belal to turn it around very quickly and face Shavkat Rakhmonov, just because UFC brass, they're not big fans of Belal Muhammad. Like I said earlier, Belal, it's not that he's a bad guy, it's that he just rubs people the wrong way, and a lot of his shenanigans that he ends up doing, like online and stuff like that, he's not a person that goes for finishes, which the UFC doesn't like, which I will talk about more later, about a separate situation where a UFC fighter is not going to be on the roster anymore because of lacks of finishes. And UFC doesn't like their fighters to just always go by decision. And the fact that they ended up going by decision, Dana didn't look too pleased putting the belt on Belal. So I'm pretty sure the UFC is going to force him to turn it around very quickly and face Shavkat, so Shavkat can take the belt away from Belal, and now the UFC can start pursue building their new superstar in the making, because Shavkat, I think he has like 15 finishes in 15 fights, 15-0, undefeated, has never gone to a decision. So you can build that to the casual audience and say, hey, this is what we have to prove. Co-main event, Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes. Tom Aspinall ended up coming in as a heavy favorite. It was ended up closing in at like minus 398. Curtis was like a plus 300. I was like, there's no way Curtis Blaydes beats Tom Aspinall regardless of the late start time. I think Curtis Blaydes is an excellent heavyweight. Problem is, this guy has terrible IQ. Now, maybe I feel like he is damaged a little bit after knocking out Chris Daukaus, and Chris Daukaus is not a great heavyweight, and he ended up knocking him out via punches. I think he knocked him out cold, clean. And ever since then, Curtis Blaydes hasn't really been going for takedowns. And I get it, maybe somebody told him, hey, you gotta be a little more aggressive and stop going by decisions. But this is the one case I would have said, hey, Curtis, I need you to go shoot immediately for a takedown. And he was able to catch Tom Aspinall. But Tom Aspinall has also eaten a punch by Sergey Pavlovich, and we saw how that happened. So it was no different what was going to happen next for Curtis Blaydes. Tom Aspinall connects the punch with Curtis, puts him down to the floor, and then Tom jumps immediately and starts going ground and pound. Tom hits like a truck. That guy is the prototype. He is the new version of what heavyweights are going to be looking like down in the future. The man is tall. He is fast. He moves like a welterweight. He is 6'5". The man is like close to 260, and his footwork is impeccable. His hand speed is through the roof. He hits like a super heavyweight. And this is the type of fighter that you would see that's built in a lab or built in UFC 5. This is not something that we normally do see, and he's going to run through the majority of heavyweights. Now, he ended up getting the win, retaining his interim title belt. Calls out Jon Jones. Now, that is a fight that is starting to build a lot more anticipation for, and Jon is starting to hear the rumblings. Jon is starting to hear the backlash of, why are you taking this fight against Stipe Miocic? This man hasn't won a fight in 4 years. The man's retired. He's a firefighter. What is he doing? I'm one of those people too. I'm not going to lie to you. There's no reason why Jon Jones is going to be taking this fight against Stipe. He's trying to change the narrative that, hey, I'm going to be fighting the best heavyweight of all time, and we'll be the best light heavyweight champion of all time versus the best heavyweight champion of all time. Look, that fight should have happened like 3 years ago, all right? But he chose to take 3 years to get fat. I'm being real with you. He took 3 years to be fat after he should have lost the fight against Dominic Reyes. And I'm a huge fan of Jon Jones. He should have lost against Dominic Reyes in Houston in February of 2020. Takes 3 years. Comes in, fights Ciryl Gane after Francis Ngannou no longer is fighting with the UFC. Fights Ciryl Gane for the vacant heavyweight championship. Takes Ciryl Gane down, submits him. Doesn't fight doesn't fight in June, July, August, whatever. Wants to fight in November against Stipe. Gets hurt. Tears his rotator cuff or whatever it was. He's out for officially a year. Now Stipe is on ice. They created his interim title belt. You get Tom Aspinall in the mix against Sergey Pavlovich. Tom Aspinall wins. And now Tom Aspinall defends his interim title belt. And this is building more momentum towards a Jon Jones Tom Aspinall fight. And there's a lot more rumblings of, hey, we don't want to see Stipe. And to be honest, Stipe's old. He's 1 year older than he was last year. All right. I believe he's 40 or going on 41. There's no reason why we should be seeing this fight come in Madison Square Garden in November. I know it hasn't been official, but I'm pretty sure the rumblings are getting louder and louder. And if it comes to the point where the fans start dictating, hey, you know what, Dana, we don't want to see this fight, to the point where Dana has to make a decision and revoke and say, hey, Jon, I'm sorry, we can't make this fight for you. You'll be fighting Tom. Then it'll become extremely interesting whether or not Jon Jones actually takes this fight. But as of right now, I really do see that Jon Jones is going to fight Stipe. The one caveat is, if he does get through Stipe Miocic, I want to know this. Does he retire after the fight? Because if he retires, that stain on his career is going to be, you ran away from competition. All right? You ran away from the next best thing. All right? And you were considered the greatest of all time, but you ran away from that competition because you didn't want anything to threaten your legacy. And a lot of people would say, hey, Jon Jones is one of the all-time greats, but when it came down to facing Tom Aspinall, who was next in line, and he was knocking everybody out within the first round, outside of what's this guy's name? The dude, man, is really, man, he submitted him in the second round. It was like Andre something. I can't remember his name. But anyways, Jon, I would love for him to take that fight. We'll see what happens. And then outside of that, Paddy Pimblett fighting Bobby Green. I'm not calling that man King Green. I'm calling him Bobby Green or Robert Green, whatever you want to call him. Bobby Green ended up coming in there, hands down as usual, trying to throw jabs. Paddy kept kicking him in the legs, and then to the point where Bobby Green was like, I gotta go for a takedown because he's gonna take me out for my legs under. And then Paddy immediately identified that, shoots for a guillotine, and then immediately transitions that into an arm triangle, or I'm sorry, from a triangle chokehold, and that thing was sight. Paddy's a world-class what's it called, jiu-jitsu black belt. Transitions that into the triangle, and then also uses that into a armbar too. And Bobby Green did not want to tap, so he ended up going to sleep. And then Paddy Pimblett gets it done. He will get a ranking in next to his name starting tomorrow, Tuesday morning. What's next to Paddy? He actually made his very first call out Renato Moicano. Only thing is, Renato Moicano is actually going to be fighting Benoit Saint-Denis in the main event for UFC Paris in September. Really interested to see what's next for Paddy, whether he gets that fight or not. My gut feeling is I feel like he is going to get that fight. He's probably going to get that fight in December. Doesn't look like Paddy wants to fight in New York because of the tax implications. Rather fight in Las Vegas where there is no state income taxes. And then last thing I wanted to talk about, not going to talk about Gregory Rodriguez versus COD or Giga versus Arnold Allen. Both good fights. What I did want to talk about is Mohammad Mokaev versus Manel Kape. Both fighters had a lot of heat going into this fight on Saturday. Mokaev in the past actually got into a physical altercation with Manel Kape at the UFC PI. Mohammad Mokaev wanted to squash the beef at the Fighter Hotel, and then ends up sucker punching Kape in the jaw, and then Kape gets all rattled and wanting to go all out in a brawl with him until people and security had to intervene. Now this is Mokaev's last fight on his deal. Kape historically hasn't been able to make weight sometimes, or has really bad luck with fighters canceling on him, whether it's on fight week or whatever. All right, look at his Tapology page. It's a bunch of canceled fights. So originally this fight was going to be on the main card, right? But then they slowly dwindled this down to the feature prelim, down to the first fight on the prelims, down to early prelims. Now when you're in the early prelim slot, from a main card to early prelim, that's a big jump right there. Your slot positioning when it comes to a pay-per-view is very, very crucial, because it determines on how the UFC is going to try to advertise you and market you for future fights. Now the fact that they ended up lowering them close to the bottom of the total poll clearly states that the UFC was not feeling this fight whatsoever, and also felt like this fight could have been in jeopardy. Now the fact is that UFC has not been happy with Mohammad Mokaev. They haven't really been so happy with Manel Kape, but they completely understand that a lot of it is not his fault whatsoever too. So, but they're not happy with Mokaev, and Mokaev ended up going into the octagon and immediately looked like he wanted to start a brawl with Kape inside the octagon. About like 50 security guards ended up coming in, and they were trying to hold him back. Plus, they were going to be fighting within like 5 minutes after Buffer ends up doing the ceremonial announcements. Now, as soon as the bell rang, at that point everything changed, and then they were just point fighting at that point, and it pissed a whole bunch of people off. It pissed off the matchmakers off. It pissed off people in commentary. It pissed off fans, and they were booing. All right, they were booing. They were doing the whole flashlight things, the SOS thing, whenever you lost at sea. And a lot of people, like fighters in general, they were like, "Look, you started all this shenanigans just to be point fighting. This is ridiculous." And there, some people like Michael Chandler were like, "This is why you were placed on that time slot on the card, because the UFC can just read through your bullshit and realize, hey, you're just doing this all for shenanigans." Now Mokaev ended up winning a 30-27 or a 29-28. Very low volume from both of them. I felt like Kape got the bigger significant strikes over Mokaev, but Mokaev just did more and landed takedowns. Overall, what comes down to it is that Dana White said on the press conference he is not bringing back Mohammad Mokaev. He is 7-0 in the UFC. He is 23 years old. He is a young prospect. The UFC normally doesn't get rid of young prospects, especially if they're undefeated. And the reason why he is doing all this is because, one, is not only about his boring fight styles. All right, his boring fight styles has something to do with it, but it has to do with a lot of the shenanigans. All right, a lot of the behind the scenes type of stuff. Zach Puaga on Twitter said it best. He's like, I can't always be the insider man, but the UFC is letting go of Mohammad Mokaev because of a lot of the shenanigans that's going behind the scenes that he can't even discuss about. Because obviously, if he discusses about it, then they're gonna look at him sideways, like, why are you breaking news that is usually supposed to be kept within inside doors, right? So there's a lot of shenanigans that's going around. I heard rumblings about how he was trying to jump Jake Hadley when they had their beef, and he was trying to catch him outside with his boys. All right, and I heard rumblings of just trying to go at it with other fighters, start brawls and stuff like that. The bottom line is this: the UFC doesn't view Mohammad Mokaev as somebody that is marketable, and also can make them grow what's it called, the UFC, and exceed dollars inside their accounts. All right, the reason why you got Jon Jones, you have Nate Diaz, you have Conor McGregor, you have these knuckleheads that are fighting for the UFC still inside the promotion, is because they bring the UFC money. All right, they bring money to the business, and they know how to produce. So that's why the UFC looks the other way. Mohammad Mokaev, who has got 2 finishes inside the UFC, that one, his debut where he ended up throwing a flying knee and then catching Cody Dirty inside of a guillotine, that was one of them. The other one was against Tim Elliott, where he ended up making him tap out. Outside of all that, Mohammad Mokaev hasn't had anything really impressive. He's very low output, likes to just tackle you, throw you down to the floor, and just try to point fight or try to win by on top positioning. And the UFC doesn't like that. They feel like he could do that for another promotion. Bottom line is, he's not going to be with the promotion. He's 23 years old. He wanted to be the youngest champion in the UFC. And to be honest, if they would have kept him, he would have just kept on winning, to the point where the UFC would have had to do something about it and give him a title shot. And that's the last thing they wanted to do. That is one reason why Dana White wasn't happy with Belal Muhammad winning the title, because he's a decision machine and he doesn't really produce anything for the UFC. Now he's a champion, so he's going to have a little bit more leeway and wiggle room inside the promotion. And he has an audience where he can gravitate towards, and they'll be willing to pay to watch him. The Palestinians, they're very happy. Apparently there was a parade in the streets of Manchester after Belal won, so they had the UFC knows, hey, there's a market for Belal. Unfortunately, there really isn't a market for Mohammad Mokaev, and Mohammad Mokaev more than likely is going to be fighting for a different promotion in a couple months. The UFC is not going to bring him back, nor should they. They already let go of a couple of flyweights. Doesn't look like the UFC wants to do business with boring fighters. If you're going to come into the UFC, you're going to have to be exciting and and win. All right. Also, Dana White Contender Series is coming up very soon, so there's also that factor too, that hey, Dana White is going to want to have fun, exciting fighters at a very, very cheap cost, instead of paying somebody an exorbitant amount of money. So I feel like that a lot of that has to come with it too. So, but yeah, guys, UFC 304 is officially in the books. We are on to Abu Dhabi come Saturday. Early start time, I believe, is like 12 o'clock prelims, 3 o'clock main card, which is beautiful, because then you can do things elsewhere after the fights are over. But until then, guys, I am Flyweight, and thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys for the next show. So then, guys, peace and have a good one. See ya.